Um, we're so thrilled to have you here in person at Williston this afternoon. A special welcome from the College Counseling Office. My name is Catherine McGraw. I'm the Director of College Counseling, and we have scheduled the next hour to talk with you about an introduction to the college process. And this is a rather informal program. I'll be presenting for about 25 minutes, talking a little bit about what to expect in the process. And as I'm speaking, I encourage you to be thinking about what questions you have, both for me and my colleagues who have joined me this afternoon. They're going to be sitting right here and joining me to help address questions in the second half of the program. I have not been on this stage in a long time. I was thinking about that as we were getting set up. This is where we often give announcements to students during assemblies, and there have been many presentations in the past. And it feels so good to be standing here in this moment that feels normal, to see you and to be in person. I'm just reflecting on how long it's been and how much it means to see all of you. So the college counseling process, I'd like to take a quick minute to just get a sense of who's here and your familiarity with the process. So just as a quick starting point, could I just see a raise of hands of how many of you have a son or daughter, a child who's already been through the process, an older sibling? Wonderful. How many of you have more than one who's already been through the process? You all could be up here with me on stage and leading this program. It's helpful to have that inside information. And how many of you are just first time through, just getting started? Welcome, and it's going to be fine. This picture on our intro I thought was an appropriate place to start, because it gives you a snapshot of what is happening actually right now in the college counseling office, like right now, this week, today, and in the upcoming week. So we are knee-deep right now in helping our seniors to hit the submit button. And so here's one of our students hitting submit, and when they do, there's this little minute that they see on their computer screen with like confetti that goes off, and they can like sort of submit, and the confetti goes again and again, and we try to capture that confetti moment with a photo to send home to mom and dad and to display in the office, because that first time through when you hit submit is such an exciting moment. I wanted to take a quick minute to introduce our college counseling staff. So here's a photo of us. We were out on a retreat several years ago touring a campus. I hope you can see our names. I have several of the college counseling staff members here. If I could ask them to just raise their hands for a quick second. So I have Emily McDowell, Shannon Kane Long, and Charlie Lonergan, and several others who are not able to be here right now. So Tom Beaton, Diane King. We are so fortunate to be a very well-resourced office, and I hope you'll take a chance to just stop by and see our physical office as well, Plimpton Hall, right next to the schoolhouse. It's rather unique to have an entire office space dedicated just to college counseling. We feel so blessed to have so much space, and being next to the schoolhouse means that students are coming and going on a very regular basis. There's a classroom that gets used in the back. So we get to see students very regularly. We get to know them in a very personal way, not just in college counseling, but also from our proximity to the students and the schoolhouse and their everyday life. Before I talk a little bit about what to expect in the college process, I want to talk a little bit about my own personal experience taking my college counseling hat off and putting my parenting hat on. And my apologies to my colleagues who are here who've heard way too much about my children going through this process. And several of you, if you know me, may have heard a little bit about this as well. But I think it's important to share because parenting a teenager is humbling. I have 3 children. 2 have graduated and gone off to college. 1 is a 10th grader here. I'd like to ask that we keep the fact that I'm talking about them under the cone of silence of the chapel. So please don't tell them. But I want to back up a little bit to what it was like starting out with the college process with my first son. His name's Jack. And when we first started out, I thought, oh, this is going to be great. I get to go and tour colleges, and it's going to be so bonding, and we're going to talk and have these moments in the car where we really connect. And so we're headed off, and it was actually 2 years ago this weekend. It was a long weekend. We had visited my family living in the Washington, D.C. area, and we were driving to see Gettysburg and Dickinson, which are under 2 hours from the D.C. area. And I had the great idea of, oh, Jack also needs to do some practicing of driving. He has his learner's permit. We need to get in X number of hours. We need to log these hours. I think I'll have Jack drive. So once again, it was under 2 hours to get there. And by the time we arrived in the town of Gettysburg, where we were staying in a little hotel, Jack and I were not speaking. It was not a long drive. I think it was halfway through by which we would already reach that moment of silence in the car. And then the next thing that happens is we are so challenged to get along that we go to separate restaurants in the town of Gettysburg that night before we have our tour the next morning. It got a little bit better by the time we headed off to Dickinson for the second tour, but it's just a moment of like I thought it was going to be one thing and it was the opposite. He did head off happily to college a year and a half later, and all is well. But take 2, my son George went through the process. He's a first year now, and we're going through the process, and there was this line that I heard over and over again in our house anytime, which was not often, that I brought anything up about college, and he would say, Mom, there is a reason why I have my own college counselor. And his college counselor is here, one of my colleagues, Mr. Lonergan. And it was so hard just to keep that mom hat on and not try to helicopter. And I helicoptered a little because it's just hard. These are our children going through the process. And the other thing I'll share about George is that on October 31st, he finally came to me for help. And his deadlines were November 1. And it was at 11:45, not on October 31st, but November 1, 11:45 p.m., where we finally hit submit. And that was the first time where I think he acknowledged, oh, Mom might know a little bit about this process. So once again, I think a lot of this, in going through this as a parent, is catching our children at the right moments to talk, and when they're not open, recognizing this isn't the best time to talk about the college process. And it's sometimes a wild guessing game, but there is a humbling aspect, and we all recognize that in my office. And so I really do encourage you to use us and turn to us in the process, because we are your partners in guiding your children through their college search. So, okay, my children aside, I want to offer just a little bit of sort of big picture, what to expect, and what we're seeing. And I think an important place to start is that in the past year and a half or two, the world of college admissions has really been turned on its head, especially by the whole situation with COVID. So we have seen so many changes in the process, and I'm not going to elaborate upon them, but we are hearing things from our colleagues on the college side, like number of applications have gone up by 30% or 40 or 50. One school even said by 60%. Increased use of the common application. Many more students have been sending in applications to schools where they've never had a chance to see them. Meanwhile, as the numbers are going up, we're also seeing the vast majority of schools having turned to test optional policies, and that has increased the sort of frenzy in the numbers of applications. There's a new emphasis that we're trying to talk through with students on demonstrated interest. So all these things we will talk with you about in greater depth as the process continues. I just wanted to mention and acknowledge them, and in doing so, also go back to the fact that at the end of the day, we feel very positive about the experience that your sons and daughters will have at Williston going through the college search process. We are still focusing on the basics, which is guiding them through the process to find the best fit college for each and every student. And one of the things I personally love about Williston, and it speaks to me again and again in working with the students, is that we have this incredible range of students that we work with. And the number that's most important to me here is that of the class of 2021, this past year, so approximately 125 students are enrolled at 73 different institutions. And I think that says so much about the type of school that we are, where we have such diversity in institutions that our students head out to. So we don't have this short list of schools of like, oh, this is our go-to list. We're really working with each and every student in identifying what's the best fit for our students. The next little part of what I'd like to share is on our website. So I just want to say you don't need to take notes. We will send all of this out to you in terms of our PowerPoint. But just a little month by month what to expect for juniors in particular as they head through the process, and then I'll say a little bit about seniors. And I should have taken a moment to ask, how many of you here have a junior who's getting ready to go through the process? Wonderful, and welcome to the process. Are there some who may have a sophomore? Because there could be, and I applaud you for being here early to get started. Any with a first-year student? Wonderful. Any of a senior, too, who are in it? Wonderful. What I'm going to share applies most specifically to juniors, but there's a lot that really applies to all students as well, which we can talk about in our questions. So October is a key time for us to get most directly involved with juniors getting ready to start and launch their college process. It actually was last week taking the PSAT. So students take the PSAT in both 10th and 11th grade, a practice, getting ready for the SAT. And at the same time, they're starting to get messaging about the college process. Sometimes it might be in a class assembly or a panel or through our smaller discussions with advisory, but they're warming up to the process. And a key thing that happens for juniors will be in the month of November, typically just before or during Thanksgiving break. And that is that students will receive their college counselor assignment, and in addition, they will receive, as will families, access to an online platform called SCOIR, S-C-O-I-R. You may in the past have used Naviance, and we have switched to a newer platform, which we are very excited about, that has, after a year of doing a demo and using both programs, been much more popular with our students. It's much more user-friendly and lines up with what they're accustomed to and some of the other things that they do, say through social media and online. December, it's kind of quiet for juniors, but they can continue to become familiar with the process through SCORE. They're headed out on the winter break, but in January, things are very intentionally going to heat up. And what you will hear about in emails from us going out to all parents and also to students is that they are involved in a required class. Last year we did it on Zoom, and that worked very well. In the years prior, we did it in person. And we need to see sort of what might be the best model this coming year. But it is the introduction to how do I research colleges? What do I think about in the process? What is SCORE? How do I use SCORE? How to start to think about building a list. What does it mean to visit colleges? what about the Common Application? They open up a Common Application account with us. So we're giving them that foundation in a 3-part series in January before they start to meet one-on-one with the college counselor. So we likely will see them at the end of January or starting in early February, one-on-one, and we'll be working with them, say, approximately every 2 to 3 weeks in a one-on-one meeting during free periods during the academic day. In addition to that, we might be delivering content through our class assemblies. The most popular class assembly in the whole process is typically in January. We bring in young alums, like within the last 5 years, young alums, and they speak in a panel offering advice both to juniors and to seniors, slightly different content. And I am telling you, more than any other assembly and more than anything that we ever say in my office, that is the time when students listen. They listen to what their friends have to say. So it's a really valuable exercise for us to bring in students who've just been through the process to offer advice. So most likely that will be in January. February, they're starting to meet with us. And then I'm gonna pause for a minute on the month of March, because March is one of the times when you come in and we could really use your help. So specifically for the parents of juniors, there's a 2-week spring break. And that is a golden opportunity to start to tour colleges. I'm going to talk a little bit more about touring in just a few minutes, but in going through month by month, start to think about where your family might be or what you might be able to do in terms of helping to arrange for some tours and visiting schools in the month of March. Month of April is one of the key times where students are hopefully preparing to take standardized tests, continuing to meet with us. There's special programs that we tend to offer. Standardized testing continues in May, and I have a couple more slides where I'm going to revisit the standardized testing. So that brings us to summer. Seems so far off right now, but just like March, summer is another time where we really need your help. And once again, perfect opportunity to be thinking about visiting colleges. There might be some opportunities for test prep. We can answer questions specifically with some strategies about how to use summer, but I ask you to think about March and summer in your family's lives in the upcoming year. I'm gonna just speed through a couple things in the fall because this is really fast forwarding, but come next September for the families of current juniors, they should be arriving for senior year with a draft of a college essay, with a pretty intact list that will be finalized at the end of the summer, opportunities to talk with college reps, college deans and directors who come and visit Williston. We're seeing many more of them in person again this year. Everything was online at best last year, so it's so much better this year. So September and October are about the sort of pulling it all together, finalizing things, going back to that first picture that I showed you, preparing for that moment of like, okay, I'm gonna hit send and the confetti goes off. Many students are doing that for November 1 with either an early action or early decision application, which we can talk a little bit more about as we go. And then November is a continuing of how to prepare additional applications and prepare for regular decision, which is typically January of the senior year. I'll make all of these notes here available, and once again, this is on our website. December and sort of heading on into the winter of senior year, it's a bit of a waiting zone time. This is also, I should have also mentioned that there are financial aid applications that are completed in the fall of the senior year, which is sort of a separate process to revisit and talk about. February is a time when we say to seniors, keep going to class, stay focused on keeping your grades up. Like they're in that waiting zone, but they still need to be engaged as students here at Williston. So there's not a lot directly with the college process until March. And The decisions start coming in March, and March and April are times to be making final decisions leading up to May 1st. So May 1st of senior year is the moment of like, the deposit is due, we are making our final decisions. So that's all really fast forwarding, and I mean to really focus on the things that are happening in junior year and not get too carried away with details. We will spend a lot of time talking with your sons and daughters about types of applications, early decision, early action, early decision 2. We're now seeing early action 2. Restricted, rolling, priority. There are all these different types of applications, and the 2 that we're dealing with the most right now to become familiar with moving forward would be early decision, which is a binding commitment to one school. So we have quite a few students. I would say close to half of our seniors may be submitting an early decision application. Almost all are submitting some type of early action application, which is non-binding but means you get your decision back early. This is all fast forwarding, but vocabulary that you will become very, very familiar with as we go through the process. This is a page that's actually on our website that I draw your attention to because with all of this month-by-month one-on-one work that we do with your sons and daughters, there are a lot of specialized programs you'll start to hear about that are built into what we do. Under normal times, when it's not COVID, we welcome admissions deans and directors to campus for college fairs. We're doing that in a one-on-one way right now, where we have college deans and directors coming in and sitting in small groups in our office with students. We offer panels for students and for parents, where college admissions officers will offer advice and talk about trends and tips. We have a mock interview program where students practice in the spring of their junior year. We have had up to 2 full days with sort of revolving door involving 15 plus different deans and directors coming to campus, practicing one-on-one with our students and then offering advice of here's what you did really, really well. Here's what you might work on in an interview. You did a great job answering this. I'd be sure to emphasize that, or make more eye contact, or don't forget to shake hands. So that's one of our favorite programs in the spring. We also offer specific advice for student athletes. So Tom Beaton, who is not here right now, will be here tomorrow morning. We have a panel with college coaches coming in to talk about going through the process as a student athlete, and as our athletic liaison, Tom can answer specific questions for parents and students related to the process. We can all address questions, but he really specializes in working with our student athletes. The classes, which I mentioned, and young alumni are also a very important part of the process. So what are we trying to do? At the end of the day, we want to send your sons and daughters off feeling like they have been in the driver's seat. We are behind them as the college counselors and parents, steering them and helping them to feel confident, building that balanced list, and ultimately landing at their best fit college. So we're in this together. We're partnering with you to make that happen. And what I'd like to do now is I have like 5 or 6 action items to do things that I think are really important. And once again, I'll send these all out to you, but there are some things that you can do right now as both parents of 9th, 10th, and 11th graders getting ready to embark upon the process. So COVID did change the way college visits work. So 2 years ago, I headed out with Jack, and we're driving and headed off to not speaking, go and tour. We weren't talking during the tour. Today, there are actually 2 different ways for you to visit colleges, and you could get started on this with your sons and daughters over a long weekend. So now, in addition to visiting in person, you can you can go onto websites and sign up for virtual offerings. It's become incredibly commonplace to see things like virtual tour, a virtual information session, interviews online, panels online, talk to a student. And so it's probably hard to see some of this, but this just gives you some of the types of things that you can do to connect with colleges. And this is all part of this thing called demonstrated interest, which we don't love in my office, but it is a reality of the process of schools are trying to figure out as these numbers go up and there are more and more applications, who's actually coming? Who actually is interested in this particular college? So they really like to see different types of engagement. And the good news is you don't always have to go there in person. I don't know if you can see some of the small print in yellow, but this includes register for an online interview, register for live virtual info session, sign up to talk to a student, contact an admissions counselor, register for guided virtual tour, take a self-guided tour. If you do go to campus, be sure you actually find some way to sign up and let the college know, yes, we were here in person to tour. Like there might be a little card to fill out at the Office of Admission or a way to register. So they want to know that, yes, you were there with your sons and daughters, you took time to visit. But these are things that you can do at home starting this weekend, and I highly recommend them. They're not always the most interesting, the most engaging, but they're helpful and they continue to change in terms of what's offered. So all you need to do is go to the homepage of a school and look and see under the admissions office link what's offered in terms of visits. SCORE I mentioned earlier. So this is our online platform, and it will be very soon that families have access to SCORE. So just know that this is coming next month, and this is your way, not just for the students, but for parents to be able to research colleges and to see what your sons and daughters are doing. You can access and view the lists of schools that they're exploring and thinking about. You can look and see what types of results Williston students have had at those particular colleges in the past 5 and 10 years. So there's a lot of really helpful information that you'll find on SCORE, and we can also help you to navigate that. Diane King, I actually meant to share her phone number, that was an earlier slide. I want to go back to that so you have it. She can talk you through how to log on and how to use that if you're ever struggling from home. Okay, on this page I have a couple of books. Sometimes we get the question of like, should we get any books? What do you recommend? And I'm pretty old school. If you come and meet with me, you're gonna see that my table and my desk are still covered with paper. And I still like the books. It's because that's what I grew up with, that's what I'm accustomed to. And the first book that you see, the Fisk Guide, I think every single one of us has in our offices. It is that old school book that you had going through the process, alphabetical, 3 to 4 pages describing each college, what it's like and what it specializes in terms of academic offerings, commentary from students. I highly recommend it. It's actually my coffee table book at home right now. It's helpful and just a go-to when you're having that discussion at home of like, oh, what about this school? What about that school? The second book here, College Match, is a resource that we recommend. It's a booklet that these are both available readily on Amazon, and it takes you through the college process with your student. It would be a great resource for them with how do you research colleges? How do I start to identify what I'm interested in? What questions should I ask when I go to a college? And there are places in the book for a student to take notes. So we do recommend this just as a companion to the process. There's a website as well that is helpful, and I can send that out in the notes about today's presentation. And then a third book, but more importantly than the book, the website, I highly recommend. We use it all the time, collegeessayguide.com. So this is put together by a gentleman named Ethan Sawyer, who's specializing in the world of college admissions. He really started out with helping students through the college essay process. He has all kinds of free resources on his website. This is a book you can purchase, but more importantly, on the website there are tutorials for how do you write the essay? How do you prepare for an interview? What is a supplemental essay? There's some things that you can pay for as well, but I don't find that they're necessary. I highly recommend the free resources, and it helps to familiarize both you and your students with the process. We use many of them as well. So once again, I'll send that to you, but collegeessayguide.com. The next thing to take note of, and this is a tricky thing to talk about because of what's happened in the past year, but I do want to address standardized testing. So we are very fortunate at Williston because we have remained a testing site throughout the past year and a half, meaning your sons and daughters can take both the ACT and the SAT at Williston in a space that they're very comfortable with. And not every single test date is offered, but the ones that are offered are on our website, and upcoming dates are highlighted here in yellow for both the SAT and the ACT. Shannon K. Long is here, and she can help answer questions when we get to part 2. Shannon, will you raise your hand? So Shannon is our testing coordinator, go-to expert here at Williston. We can all help to answer questions. But I did want to mention that she's here. She does the arranging of the dates for offering tests, but there are also tests that, while not at Williston, are available to your sons and daughters either locally here or in your hometowns. So here's some of the other testing dates. And we are going to be advising your sons and daughters, if possible, to try to take one of each test, the ACT and the SAT, during the junior year. This has become trickier, and it's a little challenging because in some ways we could also say it's become less relevant as so many schools have become test optional. So our feeling right now is try the tests. They're here, they're available, take them. And the good news is this: most schools, like the vast majority, have dropped them as a requirement. So take the tests, let's see how you do on them. In taking them during junior year, that opens up the whole summer to practice. If we decide that that's the way to go, you can take them again in the summer and again, if needed, in the fall of senior year, and then we'll decide, does it make sense to send or not? I worked with some seniors last year where in a list of 10 schools, maybe we sent the scores to half and not the other half. Like, there are definitely ways to mix and match and to personalize it depending upon the list. We offer quite a few different ways to go through test prep as well, and Shannon can address some of those questions, and this information once again will be on the website. We focus on the spring of junior year as a test prep time. The types of things that we offer every year include an ongoing workshop here on campus in the early evening once a week to prepare for the SAT or the ACT. We have an option for what's called a one-day intensive, like all day, like let's just have a crash course, getting comfortable around the testing format. There's private tutoring that's available, and there's also a whole range of free options that we think very highly of, and specifically Khan Academy, for those students who are self-motivated and they can do some of the test prep on their own. With Khan Academy, it's really quite amazing. They can link up their either PSAT or SAT scores with Khan Academy for practice tests. So I can talk a little bit more about that. I had said I wanted to make sure we have time for your questions. And I'm going to leave this slide up here because this is something you'll be seeing that comes from us as we launch the process. One last thing you can do to really help us as we begin. This is a questionnaire that we send to the parents of juniors to get to know your sons and daughters. It's too hard, I think, to see the questions here, but just to give you an idea, this is a way for you to give us insight into how they've grown at Williston, what their experience has been like. So the more you can tell us, the more it helps us in talking about things like, what do you see as your child's particular strengths? What makes your child tick? What makes your child get out of bed in the morning? What are they excited about? Why Williston? Why did you choose to have them come here? How have they grown at Williston? So we'll be seeking this type of information from you as we go to get to know them. And then we want to know what you see as well in terms of the ideal college process and what might be a good fit. What did you envision? What questions do you have? And so in closing my comments, a couple things. Let me see if I can get back. I don't want to take you through all the slides, but I'm going to. I want to give you our phone number. And I want you to put it in each of your phones. Okay, the College Counseling Office. Our phone number is 413-529-3224. And I'm pausing on this for just a second because we take a lot of pride in the fact that you can call us and a person answers. It's Diane King. And she's had 5 children go through the process and has been at the school for almost 20 years. So as a starting point, and then she can put you in touch with each of us. You can have our personal phone numbers as well once the college counseling assignments are made. But we think it's really important that when you have that question, you can call us and you get a person, and that's true for your sons and daughters as well. So now I'd like to open things up for questions, and I think we have a couple microphones, and that my colleagues can help in bringing microphones back so that we can hear the question and then try to do our best to answer. And as I see one question in the back, I just want to say, I put a little stack of my business cards over here on the table. So as we finish up, please don't hesitate to come and grab my card as well. So I see a question in the back, and I think Emily may be coming back with the microphone.
Is this one?
This is Emily McDowell coming back, Charlie Lonergan, who has our other microphone, Shannon K. Long. So we'd all like to help in answering questions.
Hi, thank you. Can you talk a little bit about gap years? How do you identify which students are good candidates for that? What do the admissions office of the colleges look for? Might that count against them? Anything you could say about how we should be thinking about gap years?
That's a fabulous question. Charlie, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
Maybe with mask? I don't
Yeah, well, I'll talk on the mic.
Okay.
Leaving things on the mic. So I think it's an interesting question, and I think probably like you'll hear with a lot of questions, I think it depends on the student. A lot of that conversation that we have over the course of time is quite one-on-one and personal in nature with that student, and personal in the sense that we really try to get to know that person and what their goals are. And those goals can change over the course of time, and so we try to have a finger on the pulse of what it is they're looking for and what might be the best opportunity. Students may present as being appropriate for a gap year as a junior, or they may present that way in February of their senior year based on how things are going and what their thought process is. So in terms of kind of how we get to that point, it's a lot of conversation both with the student and then maybe with parents as well. And then in terms of the college, I think on the college side, especially with the pandemic and how that's really disrupted things, I think they're just seeing more and more students who do take gap years, and so I would say it's more common than maybe it used to be. And a student can apply to a college right now, get accepted to that college, ask to defer for a full year, and so they may take a gap year with their school in hand, kind of knowing what the outcome is already, or they may take a different route and plan on going through the application process all over again maybe the next year. But I hope that answers your question. It's definitely very individualized for the student, and it kind of happens organically, I would say, throughout the course of conversation. Feel free to add on to that.
I would just add that I spent the morning finishing submitting materials for a student who took a gap year last year. So if a student chooses to do a program
The question is how we are assigning counselors to students. We just reserved half a day later in November where we sit down and we really think about what's going to make sense. I mean, there's some randomness to it of any one of us could work with any students, and none of us are sort of specializing in just one thing. And it's really important to us that in our caseload we each have some student athletes and a balance of boys, girls, range of types of students. But sometimes it might make sense if there is, somebody who's known a student as a coach or as a dorm parent or already started working with a student. But we do feel very well versed in that we each are generalists working with all types of students.
Thanks. Just quickly, a second question. I didn't go through this process with my older son, Dylan, but he really focused on one school. When I went through the process, I was focused on about 7 schools, and I know the Common App will be looking at 20 schools, and, do you talk about balance? Does that mean we should focus for Dyson, for example, or any student here, or any, a big school, small school, rural school, city school, or is that just too broad of a situation?
That's a good question. Emily, do you want to try to
So
answer?
I guess my initial recommendation would be to start very broadly because every student is different. So to try and hone in on, is it a bigger school, is it a smaller school, is it urban schools or rural schools, and liberal arts colleges and a research institution, sort of taking that broad swath is helpful to start to help the student understand what the options are that are out there and what their preferences might be. And then I think to answer the question about sort of number of colleges, I think was the other part of it. I have a student who's only applying to 4 schools this year, and it's calculated and specific for that student. I have other students who definitely are applying to much more schools. And I think that that's a number that is determined more by the student and the family. Do they have enough safer options and then rich options that sort of balance the list for them? And whatever that number is, it's a really personal number, and it's something that we'll work together on.
Great question.
Hi, how many students do you have per counselor?
The question is how many students per counselor? It very much depends on the size of the senior class. So it might be anywhere from, say, 30 to 40 typically, and 40 is going to be on the high end depending on the size of the class.
Hi, we have a junior here, and I just had a question about navigating the whole test optional landscape. I understand now, it benefits you if your test score isn't going to, if it's not at or above what's the median score, right? Then of course you don't submit because it's not going to help with your application. If it's above, it's clear also. When you're kind of right there and meeting that median score, what's your recommendation there?
It so depends on the student and the school. So absolutely, one of the things that's key in trying to decide, do we send or do we not send, is we're going to take in as much information as we can from a particular college, and colleges make available something called the class profile. So you can go onto their website and look at the snapshot of the previous year of seniors who went through the admission cycle and what was the middle 50% of their SAT, ACT, and what types of GPAs they had, where they, all types of information about the class. And so we'll often be looking and thinking about, well, do your scores fall in that middle 50%? And then we're going to take that and also look at what do we know about Williston students and the scores that we have submitted and how students have done in the process applying to those particular schools. So it's going to be a very fine-tuned thing. Like I said, I had one student last year where with 10 schools, we sent to 5 and the other 10 we did not send. And so we're really going to be thinking about, does this make sense and why? And it changes year to year what that middle 50% will look like. I hope that helps, because I know it's sort of vague, but I'm trying to say that it's also very personalized, and that we're going to really be thinking about it year to year.
If I can add one thing to that as well, I think maybe a very, very simple answer would be on or above the average is a score that we would tend to encourage, but as Catherine said, it really depends on the school and the program within the school that the student is applying to. So for instance, school A as a school average might have this score, but the engineering school might have this score. And so those are some of the nuanced kind of factors that go into the lawyerly answer that it depends. It depends on the school and a lot of different factors.
We went around this week with a student applying to a very large, very competitive public state institution. And so then we dug in around what's the out-of-state average versus the in-state average. So again, it's just very tailored.
One thing I should have added, and this will be really quick, just in introducing us as an office, is that all 4 of the college counselors have worked on college campuses before coming to Williston in an admissions capacity. And so we have seen what it's like on the receiving end of applications coming in. And for example, I was at a school that had been test optional for over 10 years before coming to Williston, and we felt so comfortable and well-versed reading applications with or without test scores. And so we're finding that has become the norm with so many schools that we're talking to, where they too are, even the larger publics, reading with or without scores. And what does that mean? It means that there will be a lot of emphasis on the transcript, the strength of the program, the strength of the writing, sort of the other components of the application, but there's not a red flag in any way if test scores are not included. So, that's one of the silver lining things that has come out of this past 1.5 to 2 years with COVID, is that there is much more flexibility that is benefiting students in the process.
Hello. What assistance does your office give or not give in navigating the world of scholarships?
Any of my colleagues want to start with that? Navigating the world of scholarships is something that is going to really depend upon the student. And in researching scholarships, it's a separate process from applying for financial aid. And one of the key resources, one of the things that I would suggest looking at is, depending upon where you live, a starting point can actually be looking at one of the local public schools in your area, because many of the merit-based scholarships can be regionally based. So they're going to be things that your sons and daughters might be able to apply for depending upon where you live, that are not a part of East Hampton, Massachusetts, in this local area. So that's one way to research. We will also share with students opportunities that we think are applicable. We gather and list them in SCORE, and whenever we see something that we think would apply to a whole group of students, we would send that out to students and copy parents. There are quite a few websites which we could share as well for researching and their databases. So there are a couple different ways to go about it, from national databases to being as granular as sort of what's listed in your local hometown.
And just one other piece, it's kind of the first one that we probably, it's become so normal that we don't think to mention it, but the school that they're applying to often has they have some merit scholarships that students can be eligible for. Some of those are just based on you apply, you're automatically included, and then some are apply special to that. Others, different application deadlines are required to be eligible for those. So that's kind of the first thing that we look for, and then everything that Catherine mentioned as well.
With local, I think about, like, there are a few that come across our desk every year. Like, there is one for any student who has worked at the Big Y. So that's our local grocery store, and it's a local chain only. And there's some that are based on students who reside in our neighboring, one specific county. So it can be that specific, or it can be something at a national level.
I have two quick questions. If a student applies to multiple schools with a common application, can those schools see how many schools they've applied to and which ones? That's my first question. And the second one, my older son went through the college process last year. He's at a public school. And the thing that I found most confusing is that it appeared that when schools reported like the average GPA of students who were admitted, it appeared that was a weighted score based on whether they took honors classes in AP, and maybe you can confirm that for me, but that's what it appeared to be. And yet the GPA that he got from the school was not weighted. And so I felt like I had absolutely no idea. There was no testing last year. I couldn't even get in for any of the SAT tests. I felt like I had no idea how to tell which schools he might be able to get into because of the discrepancy there. So maybe you can clear it up for me how that works.
So a couple things. So the question about, do schools know how many schools a student is applying to? The answer is no. And I even will say, as a student's heading out for an interview, if they ask you, oh, where else are you applying? I would recommend go general. You don't have to share where you're applying, because that admissions officer might be just really kind of fishing and looking for sort of an idea. It might be just a very innocent question, or it might be trying to figure out, where do we fit in the range for you as an applicant? So I said, well, why don't you just say, I'm applying to all small liberal arts colleges in New England, and this is fast forwarding, but no, they wouldn't know when sitting and reading an application per se. In terms of the GPA, there is a form that we fill out in SCORE where we are where we are required to share a GPA on the 100-point scale, and we say that it's weighted, so that's what we are sending. But what's important to also know is that most colleges will have their own rubric where they are going to take that transcript and look at and create a rating and a GPA of what they value in the process. So the most important thing is that there is a clear, clean transcript that an admissions officer can take, and it goes next to this piece of paper called the school profile, which we send out. That's on our website and something that you can review, and it's like the code to understand the transcript and what we offer. Or sort of a way to be able to dig deeper to see what the grades actually mean. Does that help to answer the question? So what other parts of it did I not get?
I guess my question is, how do you know if you have your own student's GPA, which schools they might have a chance of getting into? If the schools report a weighted GPA and you have their raw kind of GPA, maybe you guys weighted and that helps, but there's like a discrepancy. You don't know what their formula is, you don't know what your child's GPA would be weighted the way they weight it. And so you sit there looking at it going, I have no idea if they can get into the school or not.
I would say that's where using SCORE and looking at the results where it's apples to apples, Williston students who have applied to that same school with a particular set of, you can see sort of on our scattergram what GPA they had, will help to say, like, is this a ballpark school or not? I will say, I said it just yesterday to a student where he said, well, I should get in, right? Because I seem to have the same GPA as what's on this scattergram. And I said, there are a lot of factors, and we might know some of this behind the scenes of, well, how many of those classes were actually honors classes, AP classes, or standard, or did the student take more than 5 classes? So there's a lot of that, it depends, but we will know a lot more of that. So I would really lean on the Williston data that we have in SCORE more so than the generic what's on the college website, where each college can put out there what they want in terms of how to manipulate numbers, which I think is part of your point of how do we know, does this make sense or not for my student?
I think just adding on to that too, our GPA is weighted, and so the students' Williston experience GPA is a weighted GPA that's now printed on the transcripts. So I can provide that for anybody at any time. But I can also say that we have these conversations with families quite often, and we're happy to have those conversations. So, we look at these schools that we're researching, where do I think at this point the student should fall on that scale? That's part of what we do.
We will keep answering questions, but I want to share two more things while I have all of you here because I know we're at time. So you will hear from us as junior families in November with the information for accessing SCORE and the college counselor assignment. For winter long weekend, when you bring your sons and daughters back to campus, we have a kickoff program that is going into much more detail where you will have the opportunity to meet with your son and daughters. College counselors will start to talk about the specifics, and sort of we've laid out a lot of topics today, and that's where we'll really start to dig in with even more detail. So know that that's coming. If you're not able to travel, we also record or do a video of that program and can send it out to you. So do mark your calendars and think about that winter long weekend return. So I know there were a couple more hands as we're trying to just get to all your questions.
Hi there, it's a quick one. I'm from England, so this is new process. Does Williston, as college advisors, do you have relationships with the college admissions officers at the colleges where you advocate for your applicants? Do you go and say, I want this great applicants, I want you to see this application, specifically for this art program or what have you? Or is it just a numbers game? Is it just what's on the Common App? Is there like a personal touch to it?
We are so fortunate that yes, we absolutely have very close relationships with admissions officers at many colleges and universities. So Emily just spent a week actually at our national conference in Seattle, NACAC, which is our professional organization for both admissions officers and college counselors, opportunity to connect and talk across the desk. But more importantly for us, we have had, just in the last week, sort of revolving door of admissions officers coming to visit. They talk with our students, and then we get the chance to meet and talk with them as well. I'm thinking about some of our visitors just in this past week. Some of them have been coming to Williston for 15 and 20 years. We can pick up the phone and on a first name basis say, hey, it's Catherine, I want to talk about this great kid. And so that's one of the things that we love is working with schools who know and understand a Williston education and a Williston kid.
This picture up here is in the process of that at the University of Connecticut. We went to a few schools in that area over a few-day period and try to do that as a staff together at least once a year. And then Emily went to out west recently, so we try to travel and connect as much as possible.
Yeah, and with that, here's this picture is taking a group of students to Union so that they had a tour together at Union College, and then this one's kind of fun in that I was out touring a school and ran into one of our former alums, so this is while I was touring, and then one more, because it's kind of goofy and fun. This is our admissions rep from Syracuse, and he knows us really well, and happened to visit us on Halloween, and was just really able to get with the program and be fun with us and with our students. And so we actually just called him and say, hey, Ken, we have a lot of kids who are interested in Syracuse. Would you personally be willing to offer a day of interviews just for our students? And he said, of course. So it's not every single school, but we have a lot of schools where this is something that we really pride, is getting to know our counterparts on the admission side, and they come and keep in touch with us.
I appreciate you sharing your story about being a parent during this process, and you guys have talked a lot about selecting schools. How do you help the students decide program is right for them to pursue. Because, I don't know about your kids, but I know our daughter has like one idea of what she wants to do, but we maybe, have some other insight on what she should consider. So how do you help navigate program selection?
I was talking to one of my friends who's a colleague here at Williston and has a child going through the process right now, and one of the things we agreed upon is whatever we think, don't say it. Like, just like say the opposite even of like, or don't even breathe it, because then it's like wrong because mom or dad said it. There are a lot of different ways. I really actually like that book, College Match, that we showed you. It has a couple kind of like surveys that students can take to start to like narrow their interests of what type of campus they might like to be on, depending on some of their preferences and likes and what they're comfortable with. And then what types of things do they gravitate towards that might start to be indicative of what you might do like out in the future. And I talked to a student just yesterday where it was like, he said to me, what's liberal arts again? And it's kind of hard to understand sometimes. What is liberal arts versus a big university? And I think it's a message that we need to keep reviewing, and they don't always hear it at the same time. So where we can continue to deliver that message, it's going to be an ongoing process. But I do think that the reflection at the beginning of the process of knowing ourselves is really important. And you may have heard us talk in the past about what we do before the 11th grade at Williston, with the 9th grade program and core, and starting to know ourselves in the earlier years at Williston is actually beginning the college process. And in knowing ourselves and knowing sort of the types of classes that we gravitate towards and striking that right balance, those are actually building blocks going towards like, well, what do I want and what will make sense in college? But I would also say, come talk to us. There are going to be ample opportunities for parents to talk one-on-one with us. And you can initiate that with us at any time and just say, could we schedule a phone call, or I'm coming to campus this particular weekend to see a game. Could I come and sit and talk with you a little bit about this? Because the students are all over the map of, I had one student yesterday of like, what's liberal arts? And then others who have said like, I want engineering, and they knew that in junior year, and everything in between. So, that's the beauty of just seeing students grow into this process of knowing themselves and coming back to what's going to be the right fit.
I think one of the things I miss the most about the older process is that we used to have all the course catalogs from all the colleges. They would mail them to us, or they would show up and drop them off. Colleges don't really produce those anymore, but the good thing is so much of it is available online, so you can go online and look at just majors, and sometimes it's just a conversation that's so great to have with your students, because we are not a society where we're asking students in the 8th and 9th and 10th grade to sort of hone in on what they want to study by nature, right? We allow students in the American college system to explore and figure out what they want up until the end of their sophomore year. That's almost more challenging in the sense that students are just not exposed to some of the subjects that are out there. So a great thing to do would be to sit on the website and just look at what some majors mean and have conversations about. I'm thinking just the other day I was having a conversation in my office with a student about what anthropology meant, because she was describing all the things that she really liked researching in one of her psychology classes right now. So we ended up looking at forensics and forensic anthropology and sort of what all that meant. And it was just sort of a nice deep dive and the slowdown of the process for her and for me. But it's such a great thing to explore for you guys at home anytime.
And if I could just add one thing to wrap all that up, but just honestly for every single question, we really need to emphasize everything we do is very one-on-one and very individualized within our program. So, student A, student B, the theme of the conversation is the same, but it could take completely different courses. And so, we'll start in January with juniors, and there is a lot of conversation between then and now. And we could change courses like a butterfly in the wind over the course of that time. So there's a lot of progression that happens over time just naturally with the kids. But then also through our conversation, you're suggesting, you're thinking about this major, maybe check out this because it kind of combines one or two And that survey that Catherine had on the slide is so helpful too to get your perspective. I just met with my son's advisor today. He's a little bit younger, unfortunately, but it's great to hear her perspective because in some ways it's similar to what we get at home, and in other ways it's completely different. And so we're kind of, we view us as a team, family to family, and us, but it tends to make sense, I think, by the end of it with the students, just based on the conversation over time.
As we're wrapping up, once again, all of the test dates, both on campus and off, are on the website. And Shannon is also putting the test prep. Is test prep there? Test prep is there now. In addition, sort of this month by month and the books that we recommend, all on the website. We will send it out to you after today's program. My card is here over at the end of this table, and we're each here and can remain, for a little bit to answer any more personalized questions. But we are thrilled to have you here. We're looking forward to working with you. And one of the things that I always like to say with my students as they leave is just take one or two pieces of it at a time, because the whole process can start to feel overwhelming. So I would pick one or two action items for yourself and your sons and daughters this weekend, like sign up for a virtual tour and buy a book, and that could be the start, or something along those lines. So just a couple things at a time, and we'll piece it together. So we're really looking forward to working with you, and have a wonderful time with your kids today and tomorrow and the long weekend. So thank you.